You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. Now again, Catholic Chicago.
Not to be served, but to serve, to give my life, if you wish, to be the first you must see, to be a servant, to be a servant.
Thank you for stopping by the channel. It's a blessing to have you join me in what I hope will give you what you're looking for as you think and pray about your faith. I'm convinced that you are open to hearing and learning about the rich depths of theology from a Catholic perspective. Unfortunately, we've all got so much to do that we can't always read all the good stuff that's out there, deep, enriching, intellectually powerful resources that probe and explain the beauty of our faith. My ambition for you in this channel is to take the time to read that good stuff that's out there and then share with you what I discover and offer it in a condensed and, if you will, a user-friendly manner. Along the way, I know we will not only learn, but also have some fun, some deep down joy, which is somehow connected and affiliated with our gospel. And in doing this, I promise to never take myself too seriously. So stay tuned and let's grow together as disciples of our Lord Jesus. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Diakonia, a call to service. I'm Deacon Jim Norman, Vicar for Deacons of the Archdiocese of Chicago. And you just saw the former Vicar for Deacons and current Director of Ongoing Formation for the Permanent Diaconate, Deacon Rich Hudzik, the YouTuber. And with us also, Deacon Dave Brencic, Associate Director for the Office of the Permanent Diaconate. Welcome all.
It's a delight to be here.
Jim?
We saw you as a YouTuber. This is a new look for us in the office, a good look, but I think our audience may have some initial questions about you, Deacon Richard Hudzik, the YouTuber. Dave has a few questions that are coming from our audience.
Well, how did this get started?
It started to acquaint myself with modern forms of communication. As Vicar for Deacons, it certainly struck me that we as a community of deacons needed to be attuned to how the rest of the world is communicating. The day when our only connection with the faith is the 8 or 10 or whatever minute homily at church on Sunday, those days are long since gone. People are communicating in a different way. Statistic I like to quote is that every month on the YouTube channel there are 2 billion with a B, active users. So if the passion of the deacon, ministers of the church is to share the gospel, well, for gosh sakes, why don't we go where the people are? And so certainly one of the modern forms of communication is YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, I guess, Facebook certainly. So as part of my journey to become versed in these forms of communication, I just figured, I learn best by doing. So I just started doing it.
And you've been doing this for how long now?
Since, I think, June of 2020, I uploaded my first video. And as the people who advise and consult in this field tell you that you need to get your worst videos out of your system. And those are always the first. Because I was flabbergasted at how much stuff there is to learn, and it's truly a testimony to the human's ingenuity. the video editing product that I use is Adobe Premiere Pro, and this is I don't want to be too much in the weeds, but the number of buttons and drop down menus and things that you can do with Adobe Premiere Pro, it's amazing, and I just want to know what team of geniuses sat down and wrote the code for this thing. It's astounding. And so just inch by inch, I learned little things, how to do this, that, and the other thing, changing colors and speeding up, slowing down, putting stuff in, changing opacity. So I'm amazed at the technology that goes into this. I just truly, that's a blessing to me to see that how smart this process is.
And what's the title of your video series?
The channel is Deacon Richard Handing on the Faith, and the hope of the channel is to share stuff that I find along the way in my journey. I sometimes facetiously say, well, I'll read the stuff and I'll hand it on, so I'll read it so you don't have to. But really, implicitly, is my invitation is that if I can give you a general overview of something, Laudato Si, I did that. I did 3 or 4 on Desiderio Desideravi, the apostolic letter exhortation on the catechesis for the Eucharist. It's a beautiful letter, and how many of us, truth be told, there's a new letter from the Vatican. How many of us actually read it? But there is stuff there that's really transformative of our faith potentially. And so I will read something like that and try to offer it in a way that's digestible. One of the things to keep it interesting visually is, I scour the internet. There's different services for different kinds of photos and stuff, and video clips that I can use. There's a subscription to it, so just try to keep it lively and entertaining, so that I don't bore you to death. That's my ambition.
Now you have your latest effort is like a 2-parter.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. Yeah. The 2-parter is the first one's called Belong, Believe, Behave, and we play with that paradigm as welcoming people at the parish. Is it first? Do people sign up, so to speak? Do they affiliate themselves with the parish, regardless of their life circumstances, and then gradually come to know what we believe in the church, and then by virtue of the power and the joy of the gospel, of the faith of what we believe, you and I, the 3 of us gathered, and I'm sure the majority of people listening or watching this, understand that incorporating those beliefs into our lives of necessity will change who we are. It will lead us to a place of joy, of peace. And so the final step here is to behave differently. So that's the first one. And then the second one is to dwell a little bit further on that and to ask about, it's to try to remove some of the generalities of the proposition, but what does that look like if I'm doing the welcoming? What effect does that have on me? What are the pitfalls? What are the things I need to be mindful of? And so that's the second one, which isn't yet, as we're recording this, isn't yet released, but it will be any day. And the title is going to be something like "Welcoming the Sinner is Your Path to Grace." It is your path to growth, and that's where we end up finally with this project.
You mentioned belong, believe, behave. Is that a reordering for us as we have this call for the new evangelization?
It may be a reordering, and I also, I don't want to over promise on this schema. I think it's a way of having us think about our ministry. It's a way of thinking about life in the parish. But I suppose the belong, believe, behave is is a paradigm that we might think about as a new turn, as opposed to maybe I just misheard it when I was sitting as a youngster to my parents and grandparents. But I had the notion then, and maybe many of us still have this, is that, well, if you're going to take an active part in the parish, beyond simply sitting in the back pew at Mass, if you want to have a greater or closer affiliation, the idea would be, well, you better get your life together first. You need to behave correctly first. And you need to believe what we believe. And neither of those is unreasonable, but it conditioned the ability to belong, because you could only belong if you first satisfied those two conditions. And again, I'm in favor of good behavior. I'm a proud proponent of good behavior. And we do need to believe what we believe, and everybody who wants to belong should be able to belong. But it's the question of prioritization as to how radical is our hospitality. That's a phrase that's sometimes thrown out there, that we need to welcome people with radical hospitality. Does that mean just whatever you want, or is there a plan about this about your presence at the church?
Before we go off the break, what I'd like to do is, if I'm looking on my phone or on the computer, where do I find you on YouTube?
If you go to the YouTube search bar, and not the Google search bar, but the YouTube search bar, and you enter the @ sign, @Deacon Richard, you should find me. You can also search for it on Google. Search Deacon Richard Hudzik, Handing on the Faith, and it will pop up. So that's where I am, @Deacon Richard, or Deacon Richard, Handing on the Faith.
And when we come back after break, we're going to give our audience an opportunity to learn about the video that's not yet been published.
Oh gosh, this is a big reveal.
This is a big reveal.
Gosh, this is cool.
So stay tuned.
Oh, this is great.
The cup that I must drink, are you willing?
We are hiring. Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Chicago is looking for mission-driven individuals who want to help make a positive difference in the lives of people in need throughout Cook and Lake counties. Be part of a diverse, talented team of professionals in the largest human services organization in the Midwest. We are dedicated to helping people chart a more stable, happier future for themselves, and we accompany anyone in need, regardless of faith, gender, race, or ethnicity. Competitive salaries and generous benefits add to the satisfaction you'll have every day, knowing that you're helping us amplify our impact in Chicago. To see our list of employment opportunities, visit CatholicCharities.net.
I am a seminarian.
The church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood, is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
Catholic Charities' Family Self-Sufficiency Program has assisted thousands of single parents who are working to become more self-sufficient through education and employment opportunities. Our experienced case managers accompany participants for up to 5 years on their journey to identify, address, and break down barriers to improving their quality of life and achieving meaningful goals for themselves and for their families. Professional, compassionate assistance is offered in a safe and trusting environment as participants develop the skills needed to become financially stable and able to support themselves. Every achievement starts with a decision to try. To learn more about Catholic Charities Family Self-Sufficiency Program, call 847-782-4233 or visit CatholicCharities.net.
Baptized like I have been baptized. Are you able? Are you able? For I have come.
Welcome back to Diakonia, a call to service. I'm Deacon Jim Norman, Vicar for Deacons with the Archdiocese of Chicago, here with Deacon Dave Brencic and our guest today, Deacon Richard Hudzik, the YouTuber. We're going to get an opportunity to get a preview. I won't say spoiler alert, an opportunity for reflection as we look at part 2, or we talk about part 2 of Belong, Believe, Behave, which really begins to answer the question, how do we companion the newcomer into our parish using Belong, Believe, Behave?
Yeah, as I was thinking about this, some things to never do, and that is to never stand in a posture of judgment or superiority, that it's not me saving anybody. That's the Lord's work. That's the grace of the Holy Spirit. And so I think at the get-go, you want to reject any notion of arrogance about this, to embrace our own sinfulness and our own faith journey that is different. Our life in the Lord is different today than it was maybe 5 years ago or 50 years ago, that we've grown. So we begin in a posture of humility. The other thing is that we're talking about welcoming people, not because it's another backside in the pew. We're not counting heads for the sake of team building so that we have better statistics. We're offering people, in the first instance, a life in the Lord, but we're also offering ourselves. We're looking for a relationship with another human being, not instrumentalizing them into satisfying our own concerns about the future of the church, but a person whom we love. And when we love a person, the last thing we want to do is to lie to them. And that comes into play here is that, so the hypothesis is the morally marginalized person, however that might take shape, is interested in joining in the parish and doing something more than simply attending Mass. So aside from my own humility, as we move from, you're welcome here, to move to the area of believe, to speak the truth is to not avoid what we believe. We don't avoid, to use Al Gore's phrase, we don't avoid the inconvenient truth that this is what the church teaches. It's there on offer, and we don't hide it or minimize it as, don't worry about that. But we also don't take another page from Bishop Barron. When we're teaching somebody about baseball, we don't teach them the infield fly rule. We don't teach the first grader, in order to learn baseball, you got to learn that first. And so too with somebody who's inquiring about the faith, we probably don't start with a study of the 7 ecumenical councils, the first 7. Yes, it's all true, but the audience is not yet able to hear it. So, but that doesn't mean that we're concealing anything. So we need to be truthful. We also need to examine ourselves, and that is, does my own life reflect anything that anybody would be interested in, or am I a crabby old guy? Get off my yard. That kind of thing. Or does the faith that I want to share with my newfound friend, is that alive in me? Am I practicing my own faith? So there's work for me, because we're just not handing on, well, here's what you got to do in order to be part of the club. That's not what this is about. So I need to do a self check. The other, I guess, a corollary to that is my faith alive enough that there's something there to communicate? Or am I, like the caricature of the Pharisee, am I relying on the outward appearance of my life? You know, when I pray, I have my hands folded and my thumbs crossed just so, or is my posture correct? Or am I rigidly adherent to some particular practice, but inside I'm a hot mess? Do I reject in my own life a Pharisaical sort of notion of just look at the outside, you don't have to worry about the inside? It's more of that self-examining. It also involves, frankly, confronting, acknowledging. Confront is such a harsh word, but to be cognizant of the fact, like in the gospel stories with Jesus encountering, say, Zacchaeus or the woman at the well or the call of Levi, it's going to provoke a reaction of people saying, now, wait a second, what's Jesus doing with these sinners? And so, too, we'll hear that, and we're guilty of it ourselves, I'm sure. At least, I can be. That there's a skepticism, sort of a cynicism as well. What's that newcomer doing here? And what right do they have to belong? We have to acknowledge that may surface. And if we are, in any sense, leaders in a parish or ministers, we need to be sensitive to that, attuned to it, cognizant that sort of thing might arise. And it's natural. It's like the experience of Renew My Church. This is my church, and it's very precious to people, and it evokes strong passions. And so if here's the deacon or the minister welcoming this person who doesn't have their life together. Well, we want to put our hands on our hips and shake our finger. What's this about? We need to be nimble and agile and be cognizant that may be forthcoming.
As you're speaking, it just is kind of coming clear to me, and one of the things I loved about the first video, that it takes the notion of evangelization, the new evangelization, and makes it practical for me. So I can understand how to move from, I'm annoyed by that child screaming over there, all right? I come into church and I'm ready to worship, and there's some stranger sitting in my pew. And you're calling me to self-examine that. And in some ways, you're calling me in a way to lovingly, perhaps, call others to be accountable, to welcoming.
It's a bracing and really thrilling challenge that can be laid at the feet of people who love the Lord and who want to do more, but yet maybe haven't gotten beyond the way we've always done it. And so I think it's the call of the ministers, the leadership in a parish, to be tuned into some of the things that we're talking about, and that skepticism or that lack of hospitality, and say, if you really want to grow in the Lord, just try this. It's a new way of doing something. It's a way of, it's akin to calling people from the recitation of rote prayers, and I love rote prayers. I love the rosary. But when you say, is there more that we could do here? Is there something that we might add to, say, the rosary? Could we offer up petitions or something? Could we speak from the heart? And people not so sure about that, and it can be challenging. So this is just one more new thing to invite people to try on for size.
You referenced in the first video a number of biblical stories, and you talked about Zacchaeus in our last video. Is there one of the other two stories that seem to particularly relate to this particular action and encounter? I'm thinking of the story you tell of Jesus at the well.
Yeah, with meeting the woman at the well. And that's got that notion of this three-part movement of belong, believe, behave. Because the woman at the well is encountering Jesus, and shockingly, he's speaking to this woman who's there by herself. And she's engaged in him, and she's with him. And you could call that back and forth, that little bit of verbal jousting, her seeking him. And so it's that belong move. And so she's flabbergasted that this man told me everything I ever did, to use her words in the gospel. And then she goes back to the people in the town, and the disciples come along and say, why was he talking to that woman? Doesn't he know who she is? So there's that, the people in the parish, to translate it into modern idiom, what's he doing talking to her? There's that suspicion. But with the woman going back to the town, she's announcing to the people, somehow at some level she's begun to believe, because he's the one who told me everything I did, and we've been waiting for the Messiah. Well, come and try this guy on for size, because he's really something. So there's this believe component, perhaps, in that story. And then finally, behave. She's in this situation of, the five different husbands, and the man she's with now is not her husband. We don't know, and maybe that's a great bit of reflection that we might have for ourselves or for a homily at some time, but did her life change? Did she come to adjust her situation so that it was consistent with what Jesus was teaching? We don't know. Like we don't know if the prodigal son ever stayed. I mean, he may have been there for a week and then hit the road again. We don't know. But it's that mystery that we're invited into, that ever-changing, ever-growing life in the Lord. So the woman at the well, yeah, you could make the argument, belong, believe, behave.
This is a reflection alert for our audience that they will find in video. You reference the law of gradualness.
Right. And there's, we'll come back from the break, but the explicate it a bit more, but St. John Paul, it was at Familiaris Consortio, I think is one of the places, but he distinguished between the law of gradualness and the gradualness of the law. And it's kind of elusive, sort of like belong, believe, behave. It's a paradigm. It's a construct that we can help us think through things. But the difference is between, does the law always apply, or does it only apply gradually or at some point in the future? And that was a distinction that he was drawing. So maybe when we come back, we can take a look at that. Or no, we're still going. Okay. So I'm reading the hand signals of our engineers over there.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like,
well, there you go.
Time flies when
we'll have to come back for episode 3.
Yeah. All right.
Are they down for it?
Community is core to Catholic Charity's founding mission. For more than 100 years,